Hello and welcome to my special podcast When Life Changes for the Global Grief Conference 2026. And today, myself, Di Parker, the Good Grief Coach, with my guests, Di Lewis, who's a grief and transformational coach and trauma specialist, Katrina Ellis, who's financial wellness coach, are covering the topic of unresolved grief, what that is and how this might be influencing your life as it goes unseen. Grief of someone alive, a relationship that's ended without closure, or a life that changes through financial loss. This podcast is about understanding, not fixing. Although any areas of your life that you might resonate with, you might feel differently with the new insights from my guests. Thank you so much for coming along. Di, can I start with you? When it comes to difficult situations with things like family, how do you start addressing those kind of issues when it comes to unresolved grief?
You know, if a family member doesn't want to have anything to do with you, or somebody's cut you off and you don't really know why, you're left with a lot of unanswered questions, and it can take an awful lot longer to resolve. And sometimes it doesn't resolve. It becomes subsumed in your identity, and then that causes further problems.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've lived that.
Yeah, you have.
So I'd say, and it was very hard to get to a place where I could find some platform to have some peace. And I know that you helped me an awful lot to get to that place, and the acceptance that we're still here, we still deserve a life, because in my case it's estrangement from my son. And that's, you know, you bring them up, you do everything that you think is possibly the best for them. I know this child I raised, it's up to him the man he becomes. But, you know, you have this hopes, dreams and expectations then of how your relationship is going to be in the future going forward. And to have that kind of taken away from you, it's a significant loss.
And quite suddenly.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes these things are slow.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can almost see them coming, or things take a while to fracture. But when the fracture's really sudden and you don't really understand why, or there might be other people involved that might be helping that person make decisions in their lives that perhaps aren't that helpful, and you have no way of having any kind of mediation, having any discussions, so you can at least come to a joint decision of whether you continue a relationship or don't, or if you do, on these parameters or boundaries. You know, it is very hard. And then you can try and live your life and try and, you know, you can have therapy, you can have counselling, but at the end of the day, do you keep talking about them? Are they still part of your family? Are they still mentioned? Are they discussed? Are you able to talk about them with other family members? Do other family members shut up when you mention them because they might know something that you don't know, and then they don't want to tell you about something in case you get hurt? And then there's all of that. So it doesn't just affect one relationship, it affects lots of relationships.
That very thing happened to me at Christmas. I found out that he'd visited my sister at Christmas, but I wasn't told.
Yeah.
It wasn't done deliberately, but because I hadn't been told, I felt like I'd been cut out, and I am still his mum. And it's not like I'm going to turn up unannounced and say hi. But it was very painful to find that out. But what I did was I sat with it and I worked out what I could possibly do about it, which was then to have a conversation with her and my mum and say, I'm not going to just turn up unless I am invited. And I'm glad that there's communication going on with the family. Just please don't cut me out.
And it's very difficult because, you know, you then have to navigate a different relationship with every other family member. And they won't want you to be upset. They won't want the other family member to be upset, and then they have to tiptoe around, and it just escalates, and it changes all the dynamics, and it's really difficult because, you know, you kind of lose, as you said before, your hopes, dreams and expectations. So you would lose the hope of the past. I know your family likes doing a lot of celebrations, and you threw a lot of parties and you did lots of things together, but then there's always going to be somebody missing. And I know that it isn't just you that's been cut off in the family, but it's hard then to know what's going to hurt other people and what you say about other people. And you can't shift someone's perspective, and you can't help them heal because you can't speak to them.
No.
And there's
So how can we, I mean, I know, how can we help people navigate this, acknowledge the unresolved grief, to find a place where they can build a life for themselves, even though this chaos is kind of happening somewhere else?
I think people have to be held at first in their pain and understand it as a grief. Lots of people don't understand that the feeling is the same if the person's still alive.
Yes.
And that's the first thing to acknowledge, that if the person is still alive but you can't get to them, you can't be with them, that grief is just as painful as if somebody has died. But sometimes it's worse because there's no
end.
There's no end.
Yeah.
Because there's always the possibility that things might change while they're alive, but nothing's happening. And that's the really hard part. You're still you still love that person, but they're the cause of a lot of emotional pain, and holding that emotional pain for somebody and helping them understand it as grief and helping them process the unfairness of it or the reason for it. Or sometimes it's really hard to get through something if you don't understand why it's happened. And that's harder. With a death you do understand, there's a reason.
Yeah. But thanks to this lovely lady, I ended up going on a trip that helped an awful lot with this, because we went on a retreat and we went to see this guru chap, and he was talking to us about our unresolved grief. So one of the things he suggested that we did was, the next day we went through a little healing ceremony and then were asked to address our unresolved grief. And so at the time he was referring to me and my unborn children. I'd had quite a few miscarriages. So we went along, and what we had to do was, after we'd gone through some of the cleansing and opening of the heart, was to look at this lake and just be present to our feelings and allow any energy to come up that was relevant for us at that time. And so we stood there, didn't we? We did that little ritual and we stood there. A lot of the girls were thinking they weren't going to be able to scream, and I thought, well, I don't know what's going to come up. And then I just felt this energy come up from behind me, and I moved over to the waterfall, and I was waiting for permission to stand under this to scream, and you had to do it 3 times. So I went over, and it was like, I can't wait any longer. I've just got to do this.
It's like a tsunami scream.
And I just
frightened the life out of me because I wasn't looking at you at the time.
Frightened the life out of me too. And I just screamed, and a little voice in my head said, "You're not going to do that again." And I did. Up it came 3 times. And
it was the biggest scream I've ever heard in my life.
And there was you and another lady actually started tearing up with the thought. And when they came over to give me a hug, Di says to me, were you thinking of Andrew? And all I could do was do this. I couldn't speak. But all I can explain it to you is it was like I have a jigsaw. All the pieces are more or less there. There's a bit that's just not sitting right. It's there, but it wasn't sitting right. And it's like in that moment, that whole jigsaw got chucked up into the air. And when it came back down again, the pieces managed to find the place it needed to be. And so if anybody has a stuck feeling inside,
you do need to move. Shift
your energy, whether it's anger or anything else, and just let it go.
Sometimes, if you can find, obviously we were lucky enough to be in this beautiful place with this beautiful waterfall and a healer with a ritual, but you can make your own rituals. You can spend, depending on what your spiritual beliefs are, you can look at all sorts of rituals around letting go, because it's a letting go ritual you need, not necessarily a grief ritual. And that might be standing under a bridge where a train goes over, wait for the train and start screaming then if you're in the middle of a city, or going to somewhere in the middle of nowhere and having and it's really hard to scream. Yeah, you scream in the shower. It's really hard to scream, actually. And then move your body, shake your head, shake your legs one at a time, stand up, shake your whole body, do some ecstatic dance to some music with a really good drum beat. But we keep all of this stuff inside of us, and it goes into us physically, and the cortisol and the noradrenaline and all the other toxic hormones get stuck, and we have to move it out. And we may not have to do it just once, we may have to do it every day for a little while. But the first thing, I think, is being heard.
Yeah.
And understanding that if somebody leaves you for whatever reason, whether they're your partner, whether they're your children, whether they're your parents, whether they're your best friend who suddenly decides they don't want to speak to you anymore, that can give a real emotional response that stays, because you can't move through it. You can't change it. You can't do anything about it. None of it is usually in your control, unless you've been the instigator of something which has meant that somebody's left you, and then maybe you can change your behaviour. But
so just as we're talking about unresolved grief from the emotional aspects, we also can link that in very much to a financial journey that we're on. Thank you so much for coming today. So when you meet clients with unresolved grief, what sort of things are coming to the forefront for you?
I guess it can be a really huge array of issues, and I think probably the first step when I meet somebody who's, I guess, experiencing financial issues and there's grief kind of underlying it, is to recognize it, acknowledge it, not try and hide away from it, and just to confront it. It's something I've had personal experience of as well, so it's something I find really easy to relate to, and it's about saying, okay, well, trying to understand what's actually going on underneath, because there's a huge amount, or can be a huge amount, of shame, of guilt, of grief associated with our money losses, whether that's, we've gone through a divorce, we have lost a partner, and that's had a massive financial impact on our life. So we're coping with a financial impact and a loss. There's so many things, but I think the first step is just to acknowledge it without judgment, and to then very gently look at what might be appropriate in the situation to help them cope with this.
Right. So blaming themselves for the situation that they're getting into, and possibly even shaming the situation they've got into. What steps do you then use to help them dive deep on those sort of things?
Well, I think definitely, recognising blame and shame, they're very common. Many of us are guilty of falling into that, but it doesn't help us. So, if you're feeling blame and shame around it, just sit with it. But then the next step, when you're ready, is really to take complete responsibility for it. You are where you are because of a situation that's happened, maybe because of decisions you've made, maybe because of something that's happened to you. But either way, to just take responsibility. You have within your own power the possibility to take some very simple steps, just one step at a time, so that you don't get into overwhelm with it, so that very slowly but surely you can start to nudge your way out of it. And unfortunately, when it comes to a lot of emotions, our default is to put our head in the sand and to just, hands over our ears, head in the sand. We just don't want to deal with it. And sometimes for a short period of time, that's okay. And maybe that's something that we just need to give ourselves and take a breath. But in the longer term, that's very damaging, I think, emotionally, and it's certainly not going to sort your financial situation out. So when you feel that you're ready enough, maybe you've got somebody at your side who can support you, hold your hand through it, then take whatever that first baby step is. And I love the Martin Luther King quote that says, you don't have to see the whole staircase to take the next step. So you just take that first step and then see. Don't try and look at what that end outcome is, because you're probably going to freeze and nothing will get done. So just identify that one step and then go from there.
So, do you find that people lose their identity as well when they're dealing with money issues?
I guess it's definitely one possibility. It depends on the nature of the situation as to what's going on, but it is something that that can be a possible outcome, that you can lose your identity with it. But whatever your situation is, yeah, it's just sitting with it, accepting it, and when you feel ready, just take that next step. So whatever you're presented with, and whatever your circumstances are, and how you're feeling right now, it's all okay. It's all normal. If there are many other people, sometimes you feel that you must be the only person suffering like this, but I would very confidently bet that you're not, even though it may feel like you are. And sometimes when you reach out to somebody for support, you'll find that maybe they themselves have had an experience similar to yours, or they know somebody. So it's more common than we think, but we feel such strong emotions around this. Sometimes we can tend to isolate ourselves and feel that it becomes bigger than you are, and you feel that maybe you do lose yourself and you lose your identity in it. But it's all normal.
I think that's a key thing there, isn't it? We can lose ourselves in the feelings and the shame of whatever it is that we're dealing with, not realising that there's a grieving element to all of this as well. And like identifying as a mum of two boys, even though they're now grown up, because we've just been going through the estrangement aspect of things. But I've just picked up on something you said there that I can relate to, that it's a bit of a common thing, that we would all have this underlining, I'm a mum, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it's not gone the way it was supposed to go. And you could sort of intellectualise that, but actually when you deal with the emotional, and that's when you can go and isolate yourself with the shame of it. And it's about getting people to be open and talk about these things, to say it's okay, find yourself a coach. That's what they're there for in whatever area of life you're struggling with, and help yourself get to where you need to be to have your life, because we all deserve to have a life.
Do you think people talk about financial issues or difficulties less than maybe other aspects? Because I certainly have friends that have been in dire financial situations at some points, but I haven't known about it because they haven't talked about it. They've told me everything else, relationship things, or things with their kids, or things with their work, but never ever tell you when they're struggling financially, in a bit of debt, or something's happened and they've lost money, or they've lost their jobs unexpectedly, and they don't talk about that as a grief.
No.
Or they don't talk about it at all.
No, that is absolutely correct, I think. And I think when I started in this work, I was looking at the pieces that were very black and white in terms of financial advice, etc. But as I've gone through it myself and personally experienced a lot of loss with money, I started to understand there's a lot of it that's very nuanced and that is very grey, and a huge piece around emotional and the emotions that we associate with money. And when I've studied this more, I've looked more at human design and heart healing, on focusing on those pieces, because they do affect us all, and it stems back, in my opinion, to how we're brought up with money. And around many family tables, it was deemed to be completely inappropriate and very rude in some circumstances to discuss anything as coarse as money, which to me is absolute nonsense. Like, how do we teach our children about money if it's a forbidden topic? So I think it's a topic that there is huge emotion around, of all sorts, and we do need to open that conversations up. And very maybe about a year ago or so, I did a talk at a women's group, and it was specifically focused on financial losses, of which I've had quite a few. One very significant one of about six figures, just over 100 grand, and that was devastating. And what blew my mind was, after that talk, the amount of women who I knew who came to me and said, I've been through XYZ, quite significant losses, nobody knew. They said they hadn't told their friends, some hadn't told their family. So it does happen a lot, but we have and we carry such shame about it, because we think, and I was very open about it in the beginning, that I felt like such an idiot, because one of the things for me was that I knew there was an issue and I ignored my own hunch on it. And I really beat myself up for a very long time around that, but I had, I guess, the presence of mind and the emotional awareness to know that, that would be transient, thankfully. And I could see that, there were many other people who felt the same, highly qualified people who are specialised in this area, who fell prey to that. And in this day and age, financial scams are hugely prevalent. So it is very common for people to fall prey to them. And the shame and guilt and stupidity we feel around that is unfortunately very commonplace. But we need to start the conversation around this. And if we take responsibility and have more conversations with our loved ones about money, then I think my belief is that will start to very slowly but surely change the tide on that, and our conversations around money become more commonplace.
Isn't it funny how people, like you say, don't talk about this around the table with the children, and grief is exactly the same. And these significant losses that you've been talking about there, and these ladies have been holding that energy down in their bodies, and how that will affect their own health. And people don't realise that.
No.
And that's kind of another good reason why we need to get more conversations going now about both of these topics.
It's all very hidden, and people don't understand the emotional impact and the absolute physical grief that these issues have, because it's not as obvious as a death.
Yeah.
Which has its own impact and can go into the financial situation and everything else, because sometimes there's a lot of unresolved stuff that's gone on when somebody has died, but that's more acceptable to talk about and more understood.
Yeah.
But these hidden losses and these hidden things that we can grieve about, we don't even know ourselves half the time that it's grief.
No, and we just think we're feeling off or yucky, or there's some other word that we'll use
even when
a
relationship ends, or somebody leaves you or walks out the door, or it doesn't matter what stage that relationship's in, you get people saying, oh, you can have another relationship, you can find another partner, or they're no good for you. But that's not helpful, because you don't want another partner, you want that one that's just walked out the door. And the more you can't have something,
the person you're still in love with,
the more you want it. And then that has a mushroom effect, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you just lose sight of... I had somebody came to see me today who said that they thought that they were in deep depression. And when we unpicked it, it was because they weren't having a relationship with a sibling. The sibling had contacted them, but it wasn't in the way that they wanted to be contacted. And their whole life had mushroomed from this situation with this relationship to, I'm a failure as a business person, I'm a failure as a mother, I'm a failure as a partner, I'm a failure as a friend, and it was like, whoa. But she'd wrapped it up in,
you do,
I'm having an emotional breakdown, or I'm depressed. And actually what she's doing is she's grieving a relationship that she has chosen to end, but actually that doesn't sit well with her. And she can't find a way back from that now, because she declared that decision that I am not having a relationship with you any longer, but she can't deal with that decision.
The boundaries she put in place.
Yeah.
I think there's two also when relationships like that. There's like the I don't know what the terms are, but say the loser, the person who decides to end it, and the person who is left, who has to suck up the impact. And it doesn't matter what side of the equation you're on, you're both going to have some grief.
Exactly.
It may manifest in a different way based on whether, which side you're in. But it will affect both parties. And, sometimes I think people assume in a divorce that the person who chooses to leave is the person who, skips all, happily into the sunset. And it's, I know myself, when I chose to leave my relationship, the grief that I felt, it was insurmountable. I was absolutely distraught at the future I was saying goodbye to and grieving, and the family life that I grieved for my kids that I hoped they would have. So I think, it's important that we look at both sides.
Exactly, and that's what I was trying to help her do. She's made a decision, and she needed to see that the messages she was getting, or the message she got from the other person, was as a consequence of their pain, and they were both just hurting,
Yeah.
and they were both wanting the same thing, which was a good relationship, which they weren't having, and that there was a different way to look at it. But it had gone on to everything in her life was bad, and down to, you know, her money, her job, her relationship, everything. And she couldn't see that actually, no, that wasn't the case. Well, she did unpick it, and thankfully she went away quite a lot lighter, because she realised it had mushroomed into something so big that she had no control over it, she thought.
But imagine if she hadn't had that conversation with you.
Yeah.
She's this person walking around with this huge cloud over her head, and then it's going to mushroom more and more. And, you know, in many cases, I believe that suicides are the results
That's why
of
she came, because she
situations.
thought that's what she was going to do.
I can completely see it happening, that it just blows completely out of proportion, and all you need is that person just so that you can offload to whatever the situation, and they can reframe it and unpick it for you and get to the core of what's actually going on.
Because it's very hard when you're emotionally in it to see it.
Yeah, no, I don't think even
we find that. I mean, I'm not going to
professionals-
die.
Everybody needs that third party,
Yeah.
I think, to have that perspective that you can't give yourself. Even with the most emotionally aware person, you can have some level of awareness, but the benefit of having somebody else outside, not involved in it, unpick it and may take a great perspective on it is just it's invaluable in my opinion, and it's something I've benefited from myself.
But a lot of people do get very, very distressed over money issues, even if everything else in their life is right, and to the point where, you know, they might choose to end their lives because they can't see a way out, because they haven't spoken to someone about it.
It is unfortunately a regular occurrence.
How do we get, I mean, this is part of what Just Ask a Coach was about, because in my heart, for the years I've had with lots of struggles, if it wasn't for the fact that I went down a spiritual then coaching route and then met Di, you know, it would have been, I could very much equate to that, and I did have moments like that, but I knew enough then that I could reach out and speak to a coach.
And that's the difference. It's taking the very brave step of reaching out.
It's trying to get people to realise that whatever you've got going on, go and speak to a coach.
Yeah.
We have coaches for all areas of life now. And even if you just start with one thing, that would help you sort all of these others out, like this lady's done with you today. Thank goodness she went.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have a coach or can't find a coach, speak to someone.
Yeah.
Speak to your best friend, or someone that may have been through similar, or just somebody that's good at listening, so that you can get some first steps towards thinking it out loud for yourself. Because sometimes we think the most ridiculous things, but when we say them out loud, we suddenly think, why am I even thinking that? But I am hearing how ridiculous this is when I'm saying it. And sometimes just to be heard and to be seen, and for somebody to say, yes, you're in an awful situation, let's find somebody that can help you get out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think as well, you know, I was talking to a chap yesterday, and, you know, he's really brave, because he will talk about all these kinds of things, but he was saying how difficult he finds it to talk to a male friend. They don't, he said in his circle, they don't tend to talk about things other than sport or...
They're all probably thinking the same thing.
Yes. And he said that he'd absolutely seen... He'd recommended somebody else come to speak to me that was a friend, and now, because they both come to see to me and they know they're coming but they don't know what about, they've started talking to each other about their issues. So now they go for weekly cups of coffee and they talk
Isn't
about
that wonderful?
the stuff that's gone on. So they've made their little community, because both of them know that they're talking to somebody, so that's like, oh well, they might understand a bit better. So now they're doing extra stuff with themselves outside the sessions, which was marvellous. I thought, right, there are communities here for men, but I asked him why he didn't go, or why, and he said it was too exposing.
Yes.
It can be, and also depending on where you live, if it's a close-knit community, you may want a certain level of anonymity, and you don't want to, lay all your issues out on the table. So sometimes it is preferential. Some people prefer to go to somebody they know. Other people, that's the worst idea.
He said it was a stranger he needed.
Yeah.
But now they both know, and I didn't tell them. I didn't break confidentiality.
Well, of course
that
not.
they've gone and had their own little mini group.
And that's why the
goes over here.
And if they send somebody else, they might have a bigger group, and then they could start their own men's group.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. We've had a men's circle start recently, and what I learned about men, which my work is focused solely with women, because it's who I'm passionate to help. But the men, from what I understood, experts working with them, is we have women's circles and we sit and we talk, and everybody has their own time to get it off their chest. But men, from the experts, they're saying that they need to be doing something. So if they're whittling a stick or standing around the fire or barbecue frying something, then they will speak. And being the mum of two boys, I can definitely see that. If we're doing something together, the conversation will happen to come around. Whereas if I sit them down, like with my daughter, and we have a conversation, that is their worst nightmare. So, I think
an activity works wonders.
It does with
we used to do this with the kids that I used to work with that had been sort of expelled from school for a period of time, and we would take them off to do fishing. I mean, I don't like fishing, but the result is that they would be in a bit of a trance looking and think, and then they would start telling you things, or building sandcastles on the beach. I remember one day getting I'm actually getting paid to sit and build sandcastles on the beach. I'm having a ball. And of course they're opening up and they're telling you these things. Or painting. Just distract them with anything and you will start to just listen to what they come up with and what is challenging them. And you've given them that safe space to do that.
Sometimes you have to... I think we try to think ourselves out of many situations, but what I'm learning more and more in my aged years is that actually to get out of my head and actually into my body and really, and when you go do something like that, like fish or making a sandcastle, you're doing a repetitive movement and you're zened out, and you can really get a chance to drop into your body and go, well, check in, like how am I feeling? Because sometimes we're so up here and we're spinning, and we're just going around in circles. But sometimes you actually just need to just take a breath and go, okay, well, how do I actually really feel about whatever it is that's going on? And that can be the thing that just...
And I think too that is the difference between men and women, because women are a little bit more comfortable perhaps with dropping into that area, whereas men, it can be quite hard work to get them to connect with how they're feeling, and I always use the big...
I think that happens to some women as well.
The big toe thing, dropping in
toe.
and feeling your big toe inside your sock, inside your shoe, and you can see the expression changing on their faces because they have just done that. And I say, well, if I'd have stepped on that on the way in, the message would have gone up the other way. And are you listening to the message that is coming up? And where that sort of circular comes back, to health issues that people end up with, IBS, Crohn's, or
all sorts
ulcers,
of gut problems,
bowel problems.
Look at the I like the etymology of words. That word disease
with oneself
in the body. So what's going on there. But I think about men as well, and boys. It is changing. I think there's a lot of stigma and stereotype around. It's men often feel that they're not don't feel safe to actually share their emotions, that they'll be ridiculed for, that they'll be judged as less than for being open. So I think there is a lot of judgment around there, and that's something that they need to overcome, and it is a challenge that they face, which I think is an unfair one, but I do think that's changing slowly.
Because they're supposed to be strong, as we're all told to do that from time to time, but I think the pressure is on men to be strong, to be that person that goes out hunting and gathering and all the rest of it. So ladies, I want to thank you very much. We're going to see if there's any questions there for any of us at the moment. Don't know if anybody's near enough to see that screen.
Somebody says they won't be friends with you because they love fishing. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see that.
Okay, let's go a bit nearer. Life teaches us men to be quiet. It's very true, and that's what we want to help the ones that cross our path anyway to have a voice, And on our coaching platform, we've got one coach and another one coming on board shortly that are men. So, hopefully we can help get more conversations going around that for men.
And then there's a comment there that life teaches us men to be quiet.
That's the one. Nobody else got one. So, girls, what have you got in the pipeline with regards to courses and things that you've got going on?
Oh, courses.
Right, do you want to go first? Because you're just launching one, aren't you?
I did. I've had a bit of a refresh in my my work, and I've decided I'm going to be much simpler. So I'm focusing on one program called Wealth Rewire. It's aimed at women, whether it's one-to-one or in a group, and it's very short and sweet, 5 sessions, because I think money for anybody, to cover it over a longer period, you can lose interest. So 5 sessions, Wealth Rewire, and you can get more details on my website. We look at the black and white pieces of money, but also look at some of the more nuanced pieces around our stories around money, around where our wounds from money can come from in our earlier formative years. So that's something that if you're a woman struggling with money and you want to change your relationship with money, check the details out on my website, which is financialwellnessacademy.co.uk.
Thanks so much. What about you, Di? You've got a lot going on.
Yes, but really helping other practitioners, really. So we've got a grief retreat coming up. We're not quite sure whether that's going to be September or October. We're just with finer details, so we can let you know about that. Where I'm also helping somebody host a sleep retreat. So people often, not just people who grieve, but people generally can suffer quite significant sleep issues, insomnia. So we have one of our grief sleep coaches doing that, and I'm helping her put that together. And a type 2 diabetes retreat. All of these are going to be on the Isle of Man this year, and then we're going to run them in Crete next year, to help people with type 2 diabetes learn how to not just manage it, but start reversing it, and all the issues that make type 2 diabetes worse, and how you can look after yourselves better if you have that particular health issue, to reverse it. So I've reversed my type 2 diabetes with the help of the person who's running the retreat, Dr. Rada, and that is going to be a mixed one. It's going to be mixed male and female, and then we're going to run separate ones for females and separate ones for males.
That's really good.
So that relates to all things grief, all things stress, and all things disease. And then we're going to do another one, which is a gut health one. So many of us have issues with our guts, indigestion, reflux, different Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, and the gut is our second brain, and we don't treat it very well sometimes, or we don't know how to treat it very well. And anxiety and stress and grief all contribute to that getting worse. So we're starting with physical things, and we're going to be doing a retreat on gut health, and that's also in September.
It's great.
I'm going to be very busy in September, I've just realised.
You are.
Well, I know myself, if I'd had the opportunity when I have had certain losses in my life to go away and be on a retreat, but to work on that rather than just go away or stay stuck with it, that would have been great, because if I'd known how to move stuff and shift stuff earlier, I wouldn't have had to sit with it for so long. If I'd known the steps that I could take to make myself feel better,
and you wanted to find the steps, though, didn't you?
I did.
And I was the same when I lost Andrew. I wanted the steps to help me find some place I could land to live a life.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was you that found the program that we did, because then my sister got diagnosed and died the following year. But it was like, the other things were to become a grief counsellor. Well, I didn't want to do that. I'm grieving. Or to talk to Cruz. And again, I'm fed up of talking about it. I wanted something to help me heal and find a place to land.
Yeah. And the same with the type 2. From the stress of losses that I've had, I developed a disease that I didn't want to have, but I had a genetic propensity for, because other family members have type 1 and type 2. And it was the stress that knocked me from being completely normal to being full-blown diabetic. And when the GP said, oh, you know, I don't understand why your bloods have changed. Are you stressed? And I said, no, because to me, I was grieving and I didn't understand the stress.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the nuances of it. And then that has led to a physical disease which has affected everything in my life. But because I've worked again with somebody and I thought, I'm not having this, and the information out there is so abundant and you don't know what's right, what's not right, I decided to work with a specific person. Now, had I been able to go on a retreat, I'd have probably cut 6 months of trial and error out, and it wouldn't have taken me so long. But now I know that it works. I'm quite happy to facilitate
stress, anxiety, depression, some PTSD. They are unresolved grief. They've not been acknowledged, and anything that if you go presenting those things to doctors now, and actually it is linked to a bereavement further down the line of life, because it's not current, they won't make that assumption that, oh, hang on a minute, maybe there's something here that we need to talk about. And even people that come with a presenting problem of grief, when you start working with them, you might find that it's not the problem that they've come with that they need to work on. There's something else.
And a doctor can't possibly do that in a 10-minute consultation.
No.
I know this is worldwide, but in the UK and the Isle of Man, 10 minutes is your lot. If
you're lucky, you get 10 minutes.
If you get that, and you don't wait 4 months for it.
So I just want to thank the two of you so much for coming along and being with me today. Now, as for me and what I've got coming up, I have actually just launching a book, and it's called Loving Without Access, and it's designed to help anybody that's dealing with any kind of estrangement to manage yourself going through that emotional journey. It's not about curing the situation, it's just about helping you manage yourself. So that will be available from Amazon very shortly.
Hey, well done. I didn't know that.
I know, surprise.
Gosh.
I'm also doing one to bring all the things that you need for when you die together as well. Bit of a cheery one, that, isn't it? But all the,
Friday afternoon.
when my husband died, I didn't know what he wanted apart from one song, and it was quite a bit of a nightmare, and you just have to hope that what you did is what he would have liked. So it's quite nice to take the pressure off your family, just sit down, do it, visit once a year, make sure your songs are right and everything else, and then put it away again. But it goes a bit deeper than that. It's also about things like you would be dealing with, financial aspects and stuff like that. So
Apple passwords, Di.
And
that was the thing.
That as well, yeah.
When you can't get into somebody's music because you don't know what the password is.
Digital world that we live in.
And you can't stop paying for stuff that you don't want to listen to.
Right, okay. So I think that is us in our allocated time up. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here again. And thank you all very much, Tony, for inviting us along.